Hello guys, welcome back to our YouTube channel. So today I'm going to show you this small project. So it's all about an organization that has two sites, one routing site and one remote site. So in their site one, they have different departments like HR department, sales and marketing department, and IT department. And each of these departments are on different VLAN. The HR department is in VLAN 50 and 60 for the sales and marketing department, and so on and so forth. And in the site 2, they have their web server and FTP server, and then we have a system administrator right here in the other side. So one important thing to know is to configure all these protocols. I'll show you the protocols that we configure in this topology. Let me take you through the protocols. So we configure all these protocols in that topology, like dynamic junction protocol DTP and VLAN. We configure also VTP. We configure dynamic routing protocol OSPF, and we configure network address translation. And we also configure VPN to allow the two sides to communicate securely, and spanning tree protocol, and then HSRP for redundancy. So let's go back to the topology and see. As we can see from the topology, we have the core layer here, and then we have the distribution layer, and then we have the access layer. So we configure VTP in this switch so that we can pass the VLAN configurations to the access layer switch to automate the process of creating the VLANs. And then we configure HSRP here to create a redundancy in case that any switch failure. If this switch fails, the other switch will take over to allow these pieces to access internet and to communicate with the remote site. So we can see here we also configure OSPF on these two multi-layer switches and the core layer to allow dynamic exchange of routing information. And we also configure DTP between this switch, access layer, and the distribution layer switch. And also we also configure network address translation on this interface to allow the internet pieces to access the internet securely. So let me take you through the config. And on the ISP router, we didn't configure any dynamic protocol. We just simulate the internet through the loopback interface. So as we can see here, this is the IP address of this web server. We can see this is the IP address of the web server, and we are able to access it. Let me show you the IP address of the web server. You see it's 192.168.30.3, right? So we can see that this is the IP address right here. We are able to access the remote server. And also on this PC on the HR department, we can see that we're able to access the FTP server. We see that this is the IP address of the FTP server, and we with the password, which is Cisco, and the username and the password. And then we list some of the directories from the FTP server of the remote site. So you know that these PCs from the HR department and the VLAN department cannot communicate directly with each other. We need inter-VLAN routing. So this is the purpose of these distribution switches. So also here on this PC from the sales and marketing department, we can see that this is the result of the configuration. Let's see here. For the second PC, we're able to access the internet. As we can see, the first pin request failed because of the process of ARP, address resolution protocol, and then the last 3 packets were successful. So you see these pieces are able to access the internet through network address translation. And then also for the administrator can also communicate with the pieces. You see the 60.60 refers to the pieces on the sales and marketing department because they are on VLAN 60. As we can verify that here is 192.168.60.3, right? So on the administrator PC, we can see the IP address that we think is 192.168.60.3. So both remote side can communicate. Both remote side can communicate, right? So now on the ISP router, we didn't configure anything. We just configure the loopback address. We can even confirm it. So we can see the running config in the loopback interface is 8.8.8 to simulate the internet, and then we have not configured any other static or dynamic routing protocol. But this organization, the two sides are able to communicate through the VPN configuration. So let me take you through the documentation and see. So as we can see, as I have already explained, in the core layer we configure OSP routing for high-speed backup connectivity, and we configure NAT overload for internet connectivity, and we also configured VPN. We also configured VPN for secure communication between the two sites. So as to recap on the distribution switch, we configure VLAN interpinner routing and HSRP for redundancy, and then we configure VTP, which we assign one of the distribution switch as a server, and pass the VLAN configuration to the access switch and assign them as client. So we can see the VLAN configuration for IT department and for human resource department. And then this is just the topology. This is the physical topology of the configuration, and this is the logical topology of the configuration, as we see from the Cisco packet tracer. So this is all for this small project. If you need the configurations, I'll go through the configurations for each device. Here is the configuration for site 1 router. If you need, you can try it from your site. And this is the configuration for multi-layer switch 1 and switch 2, distribution layer switch 1 and switch 2. This is the configuration. So if you need, you can, and this is the HSRP protocol configuration. So to verify it, we show standby, and we see that the distribution layer switch 1 the state is standby. We can see here the state is standby, right? And for the other switch, distribution layer switch 2, the state is active. So in case of failure in the switch 2, the switch 1 will take over. So this is how we create some redundancy. And then the VTP configuration, we can see that the distribution layer switch 1 is a server, right? And the distribution and the access switches are assigned as clients so that they can receive the VLAN configurations from the distribution switches. And then for VPN configuration, we can see the router 1 here. The router 1, we create some tunneling. This is the tunneling, and for the router 4, that is this is the router for the site 1, and this is the router for the site 2. You see, we create a tunneling. And for ISP router, as we have seen, we have not configured anything in the ISP router, so everything is going through the communication between the site 1 and site 2 is going through the VPN configuration to allow secure communication. So this is all from this project. If you need, you can maybe test it from your site. So this is the topology. You see, this is topology, the topology. So thank you all for watching.